Hi, friends, and welcome back to Hersatility, where we tell her story her way. And you know what? I realized I can't just bring everyone on here, tell their story their way, and not be super transparent and authentic with mine. So I am going to hold myself accountable to that. I'm going to try to have these solo check ins with you guys and just update you because there are certain things. I consider myself a pretty private person overall. I'm very transparent. I don't like to fake things. However, I don't tell everything and I kind of keep details to myself and hold things to myself because that's just how I am naturally. However, there are just parts to things that I've lived through, been through, my story that I'm feeling God kind of nudge me to share because I know that in the thick of it, it brought me comfort to hear others telling their stories. Because, baby, one thing about it, when I became a single mother, my whole TikTok algorithm was on single mothers, narcissists, but we won't go there. The whole nine. And then similar to just like I shared with you guys in the first solo episode, me getting laid off. And these things that now in hindsight, I feel like I'm in a better place to speak on and just catch you guys up and tell my story my way and continue to do so as it evolves throughout all of these seasons of Hersatility. So, where to start? Last time we talked, I think just recently got laid off and I shared that with you guys. And I believe I shared I was happy about it because it wasn't a situation that I was totally happy with. However, like a month after that, when rent was due, I started getting a little nervous. And to be quite frank, just really nervous in general, just scared. It was a scary place to be in. I'm a mother. I have bills to pay. I have a whole second mouth to feed. So I did start to get nervous. And in that season, all I kept hearing from God was, be still and know that I am God, which sounds easy, right? It sounds like, oh, you want me to chill? Okay. But it's actually the hardest thing I've ever had to do because you mean to tell me you want me to be still and I don't have any income coming in and I have a whole child that I'm feeding in addition to myself. I have a whole home that I need to pay rent for, but you want me to be still. But that's one thing I feel like when he calls me to be obedient or just us to be obedient about something, it's usually not easy, but that's for a reason. So it took a lot. But sometimes I say that to say sometimes you're just in that season where I feel like God wants to show you you are only in control to some extent. And then there are things that only I can move, right? That only I have the power to do. So you being still, me being still in that moment, given who I am, like I'm a busybody, I'm a kind of workaholic, I'm a very hands-on active mom. Me being still, I'm also a little bit of a control freak, but he's put me through enough to like let go of that in the past couple of years. Me being still was a challenge. And I feel like he knew that that message was specific to me in that season and in that moment. Being still was like the ultimate, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to articulate this correctly. It was like the ultimate showing of just how much faith I had in that moment and like really grew my faith in that moment because, okay, you want me to be still? I guess I'll be still. And it really took everything out of me. And it's like, now me being still means I'm not leaning on like me going to get it by any means necessary. Now I'm just leaning on you. Like now I'm literally solely just leaning on God. And yeah, that took a lot of faith. It took a lot of strength. It took a lot of just like being obedient and surrendering, like fully surrendering. But it paid off because now I feel like, so I was laid off in March. I had a really good March just because I felt like I had gotten out of a like just toxic situation, not toxic, but just a situation that wasn't filling for me. But then April came. I started getting nervous. April was the worst month of this year on all fronts. My personal life, just because I'm keeping it real on here, like co-parenting was at the worst of the worst in April. I was laid off. It was all, when it rains, it pours. It poured in April, all the way. When I tell you May 1st, I got a call from one of my friends who I had been speaking about working with him on certain projects and stuff like that, that he needed help. He brought me onto a random project. That was that. About 3 to 4 days later, I got a call from an agency that I had interviewed with, that I had been following up with for months the year before, finally interviewed with, I think in January, February, and hadn't heard from. Just called me like, hey, are you still open to contract work? We have a project. Can you literally start like tomorrow? Already providing things that I just can't explain, you guys, to the point where it's like when rent was due, rent was there. It was things that I can only leave to like God and just remind you that he always provides. Fast forward, the agency I ended up doing contract work ended up hiring me full time. I'm so happy, and it speaks to something I really want to emphasize is just as selective as we are about friendships, about men, about all the things, you need to be about your employer or the company or even clients. If you're an entrepreneur, people that you choose to work with, because what you do for a living is a huge part of your life. And we underestimate, even if it's a 9 to 5, that 9 to 5 needs to not be draining you. That 9 to 5, even if it's not your ideal and you're doing your own thing on the side per se, like that 9 to 5 cannot be a negative space for you, because that will change everything. Like that will, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, that 9 to 5 is not gonna, it's gonna drain you. You're not gonna go home at 5 and work on your craft like you think you are. It's not going to lead you to more opportunities because you're not gonna show up as your best self, because it's draining you, like you're off of it. It's regardless what it is, but that's just a big lesson I learned, is not underestimating what you do for a living and that decision. It's very close, I feel like, in relation to who you choose as a life partner. And I know that sounds dramatic, but I think they are both very, very, if not the most significant things. Choosing a life partner. When I got out of what I feel was a toxic relationship, I felt more creative. I felt more motivated. Mind you, I wasn't happy at the time. I was in a low place. It was a sad scenario, but I felt lighter. I just felt like I saw light at the end of the tunnel. So I feel like those two things, just from experience, I've learned neither one is one to take lightly. When God shows you, you are no longer in a space where you're serving him. I know that the trendy thing nowadays is like, this is no longer serving me. But when you look at the bigger picture, like, this is actually no longer serving God. And when you feel that and you get to that place, it's time to move. It's really all about trusting him. Like, I feel like I was in spaces where it was things back to back. I mean, I was on his strongest soldiers lists for like 3 years back to back. But it was all, as cliche as it sounds, preparing me for not only where I am now, but where I just know and feel in my soul, like everything coming from now moving forward. Even this, Hersatility, when we last talked, I hadn't launched it. I was procrastinating. I was so nervous. Now we are a good amount of episodes in. The conversations have been amazing. And I just feel like even beyond season 1 and what we have left of season 1 to film, I feel in my heart this is just going to keep growing and growing. And so it's really just like something I want to speak to on when you are in those low moments, or when you really feel like God has, you might even be like questioning, like, hello, do you remember me? Like, I'm here. He's there, and he's actually, like, everything is intentional and everything is for a greater good. So just to give like an overall quick recap for context, I got the news I was pregnant, went into depression immediately, had a baby, huge, like crazy thing, but mostly positive, like more kind of in the right direction, obviously. Became a single mother a year later. So, okay, 2 hard years back to back. That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. 1 year after that, when I was finally sort of getting the hang of becoming a single mother, my parents leave the country. So now I used to be that single mom saying, oh, I have no idea how single mothers do it without their parents. Now I was doing it without my parents, back to back. Then not even a full year after that, probably just a few months after that, I get laid off. So it was just, I'm telling you guys, probably like 3 years of just what felt like trials. And even though the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me and come into my life was in that moment or in that time frame, I felt like that needed to happen to give me the strength to get through what was coming shortly after that. Meaning my daughter, right? Like, that's what saved me. That's what pulled me through. Like, I truly felt like, okay, what am I going to do? There was a point where I felt like in April, because that was literally the hardest time, okay, I want to give up. But what does that even look like? I don't have a choice. I don't have that luxury. I don't have that option. Like, she's looking at me to feed her. She's looking at me like she's crying. So I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I have to pull through. I have to keep going. And I'm her rock. I'm her mom. So all that to say is, like, I feel like that happened. It's all ordained, and he knows what he's doing. And all you have to do is be obedient and keep your ears and eyes open and pray for that discernment. And even when you're like, okay, I've been being obedient, I'm doing what you asked of me, and I still don't have income coming in. Like, what? And rent is due in 2 weeks. And it sounds crazy, but I promise you, like I said, there are just things that I can't explain that he comes through and he provides, and he will never let you lack and be in need of things that are essential. And he will also always equip you for whatever you need in that season that you're in to do whatever he's calling you to do. It might look hard. It might look crazy. You might be like, how am I going to pull that off? If he gave that vision to you, you're equipped to pull it through. My faith and I won't say I'm too far off, like, as far as like a different person, but everything, that foundation I was building then has enhanced tenfold, like times 100. So my faith, my gratitude, like, it'll be things like, I am just so grateful for stability. Like, that, for example, just being fully transparent, like this new job, it wasn't like, back then I might have thought like, I need this amount of income or this amount of money and I'll be good. They may not have came in with that, but they came in with something that was priceless to me, which was peace. I am like, regardless of whether there's conflict or overwhelming moments, because a job is a job at the end of the day, I'm happy and feeling, had I never gone through a job that was draining the life out of me, I wouldn't have been able to appreciate the one now as much as I truly do and be so grateful for it, regardless of whether like that income, I feel like I'll get to it. You know what I mean? The income, the titles, it gave me like a different sense of gratitude, truly. And I've always considered myself a grateful person, but it made me grateful in the sense of like, I am truly grateful for everything, and for things that back then seemed like the small things. Now they're big to me. Like, I really wake up every morning and thank God for my home. And like, I don't take that lightly at all. I thank God for my daughter's health. I don't take that lightly at all. For stability, because I was just laid off a few months ago. I don't take that lightly at all. And I know that sometimes, this brings me to something else I thought of, which was sometimes we self-sabotage and like we always find something wrong. It's like life can't just be good. For example, like when I got the job, I caught myself saying, like, when I would tell my friends, like, yeah, it wasn't like a huge increase from my last job of blah, blah, blah. And it was like, what? Like, I'm good. I'm happy. What is even the point of that? Like, it's almost like we have to find something in the storyline to be like, oh, but life's not perfect. But it's like, you can get to a place where you are truly just okay. And you realize you don't need the things you thought you needed. Like, you're just happy. And it's a hard thing to explain for me, but it just came to a point where it's like, I don't need so many of the things that I thought I would need to be happy. And had it not been for the super dark times that I went through, I wouldn't be this happy right now. I wouldn't appreciate the things on the level that I do now. I wouldn't be as close to God as I am now. I'm getting baptized, and I haven't even really mentioned that to anyone, but it's like, I am just at a place where I truly just want to give my life to God, and I truly am just okay with whatever. And to fully answer your question, it's like, how is it a different Danny now? I just know everything will be okay. It's like, even when I get curveballs thrown my way, I'm like, okay, well, my lease renewal was coming up, and they tried to quote me way higher. Last year, this whole week would have been miserable because I would have been stressed out, like, oh my God, they're trying to charge me this much more, blah, blah. This year, I was like, okay, I'm going to negotiate it down. I'm not going to stress about it, because if for whatever reason they don't come down, then that means God will increase and allow me to be able to pay for it. And that's just a whole different perspective of like, nothing happens to me. It all happens for me. As cliche as that sounds, everything that has happened to me to this day has happened for me. Me having my baby, me becoming a single mother, even my parents leaving the country. Like, it's all created a stronger, wiser, everything I was meant to be today is a result of all of those things. And I'm not even close to, like, I'm just hitting the surface. But I'm at a place where, like, I'm at this job, I have stability, which is the first thing. Like, okay, now I can breathe a little, because one thing about it is you were just not creative in survival mode. It's not just you, it's all of us. When we're in survival mode, we can just not, you think you're like in a creative block. No, you're just in survival mode, and that's normal. So, okay, I got out of that. I have some sort of stability. Now I'm free flowing. I picked my business back up. I started Hersatility. And it's like, sometimes, for example, back then I was like, oh, if I get a full-time job, will I neglect these things? That was a genuine question I had that wasn't answered until I got this job. And it's a job that fills me so much that regardless of how busy I am, on my off days, I have the energy, I'm fueled, I have the energy, my creativity is flowing to be able to pour into being a mom, Posto Athletica, Hersatility, and these things that I feel like God ordained for me. So it all just aligned, and it wasn't easy to see that for the last 3 years in any of those moments. But one thing I didn't lose was my faith, and just listening to God and being obedient and trusting Him. And even in those times when maybe I didn't hear Him clearly, or whatever the case may be, He never takes His hands off of us. So like, that's also not something to overthink of like, am I being obedient? Am I listening? He's not a punishing God like some people try to make Him out to be. He never takes His hands off of us. No matter what we're going through, it all is building us. If we go the wrong way, He will redirect us. When we don't get something we want or think we wanted, it's because He has something greater, whether that's a job, whether that's a relationship. And if you get nothing else from this solo check-in episode, get that. Like, if He ever removes something from your life, if He removes a boyfriend, a husband, a job, a career, He will never downgrade you. He will never remove something to not give you better. So not only will whatever pain that puts you through, whatever hurt you go through for that, mold you into a better person, it literally molds you to become into the person that you need to be to have the better that's coming your way. So I say all of that to say it gets better. Like, and if you take nothing else, whether you just got laid off or whether you just became a single mother, I've been in both of those scenarios. We've all been in maybe even worse scenarios than that. And I say all of this to say it gets better. Like, those times where you think you're alone, you're not alone. He's with you, whether you're acknowledging Him or not. And yeah, it all gets better, and it will all come together, and it's all already written. We're just, it all on God's time. So yeah, I say all this to say, if you just need to take this into the rest of your day, the rest of your week, the rest of your month, it gets better. I promise you, keep being resilient. Don't lose faith. and keep watching Hersatility, because I literally pray over every episode that it touches exactly who it needs to touch. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Jack Daniels, one of our sponsors, for this episode. It's been such an amazing season. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to all of the women, learning and being inspired myself through all of these amazing women that I bring on. And I pray that they've touched you guys the same way that they have touched me, and that you have enjoyed Hersatility. Stay tuned for the next season, and thank you for watching.